And understanding a purpose, as soon as you think, well, actually, no, I'm doing this for a reason, there's a real purpose behind this, that's when you can have the confidence, because you think, I don't care what people say, none of that matters. What matters is the thing that I'm trying to do.
Hello, and welcome to the Art of Value Whispering podcast. I'm your host, Melitta Campbell, business coach, value whisperer, and champion for introverted female experts who want to build a business that feels natural, authentic, and true to them. Each week, I explore what it really takes to create a quietly impactful business, one that thrives through meaningful marketing, value-driven sales, and self-leadership. So if you are ready to attract your dream clients, sell with confidence, and create lasting success on your own terms, you are in the right place. Today, I'm speaking with Karen Turner, an artist who really lives into this idea of creating success on your own terms and building a business that feels fully authentic. And we're going to dig into as well, what does it really mean to be authentic? Karen is a multi-award-winning artist whose work challenges society's expectation that certain people should stay small in their appearance, their ambition, and their place in the world. And that's really something that stood out for me when I saw her work and how she shows up, is that this exudes everything she does. She is a classic value whisperer. She has woven her value, her message in a way that's unique to her into her work and her messaging. And if you're thinking, I recognize that name, where have I heard that recently? She was recently featured on BBC One's Extraordinary Portraits with Bill Bailey. And if you saw the show, like me, you're probably blown away by the portrait she created at the end. Before we go and meet Karen, I would love to invite you to join the Dream Clients Club. It's my community for female experts who want to use their passion and expertise to make a real difference for others, but in a way that doesn't feel loud, pushy, or shouty. Inside the Dream Clients Club, not only do you get access to other people just like you and a thriving community, but in the classroom, there are hours worth of masterclasses you can dive into, looking at a slightly different approach to marketing, messaging, sales, and self-leadership to help you thrive in business. So do come and join us there and take full advantage of all of those masterclasses. Again, you'll find them at melittacampbell.com/club. Meantime, here's Karen. Hi, Karen. Welcome to the show today.
Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, when I saw your work online, I instantly messaged you because I just love what you're doing with your art. This show, it's all about how can you market yourself in a way that feels really aligned with your values, your vision, where you're going to makes an impact and it's meaningful, but you don't have to be loud in the process.
Yeah.
And not only are you doing that through your art and the way you present your art, but your art is doing that as well. So yeah, I just thought on so many levels, you're really living into the whole
Oh,
premise of
fantastic.
value
But
whispering.
it's funny because I never really thought that about the art in a way that it does that too. But it kind of, they're quite small paintings relatively, and they just sort of quietly, I suppose, say what it is I'm trying to say. But yeah, I hadn't really thought about them being not too loud.
Yeah, I think they are, but they're not at the same time.
Yes.
It's
Yeah.
very clear. But I'm sure the audience is going, but who is she? What is her art? So I'd love it if you could introduce yourself to the audience and explain a little bit about how you came to be the artist that you are today.
Yes. Okay. Well, I mean, in terms of background, like for years, I've just had a normal office job. So after school, I did A-level college. So I didn't go to art school proper, but my A-levels were at an art college. But then I just was told, like probably lots of artists are told, that you can't do that as a job. There's no money in it. It's not great. You can't do it. So I didn't even think about it. I just believed them, which, to an extent was possibly helpful because it means I can come back to it now with a bit more experience of life. Maybe if I'd done it then, I wouldn't have been successful because there weren't as many opportunities then. We didn't have Instagram and things like that. But yeah, so my background really was in, well, it was in press cuttings actually. So I had 25 years of working in press cuttings. And it was during the pandemic that I came back to art. So I'd always meant to, but never professionally, just always as a hobby. I'd always meant to. And when I left London with my husband, we'd moved to Suffolk. we thought, well, the house is bigger, so there'll be room to do some painting. And I just always put it off. And I think it was slight perfectionism. I thought, I don't want to do it if I can't do it well. So I never did it. But during the pandemic, at the very beginning of it, there was an artist called Tom Croft who came up with an idea of portraits for NHS heroes, where portrait artists would do for free a portrait of somebody working in the NHS. And even though I wasn't an artist, I feel strongly about the NHS. And so I thought, well, I really want to do that. And I thought, well, what if I'm terrible? I haven't done a portrait for 25 years. What if what I do is awful? But I thought, well, this is like a really good way of forcing myself to do it. So I got up an Instagram account, made myself look like an artist, put up a few pictures that I had done, and offered myself to do a portrait. And within about 10 minutes, someone was like, yes, please, could you do a portrait of my sister who's a nurse training to be a doctor? So I was like, okay. So I did, it was okay. It was acceptable. It wasn't my best portrait ever, but it was that got me into art again, because then I would do it every weekend and every evening and more. And because of Instagram, people were seeing what I was doing. And I was just at the time drawing faces, but people were seeing what I was doing and they were really responding. So I kind of thought, oh, this is fun. So I just did it more and more and more. And it was eventually, I really wanted to paint and not draw, but I was frightened of not doing it very well. But eventually, I found a model online who was in a larger body, and that always felt more natural to me. Even when I was at art college, I much preferred to paint people who weren't sort of the kinds of figures that you normally would see in a painting. So when I found her, I thought, I'm going to try painting her, and just suddenly everything worked. All the paintings that I'd tried the weeks before that were awful, this one was like, I really liked the painting. I really enjoyed making the painting, and to me, it looked along the lines of what I had envisaged. So that was it. It was just painting women in larger bodies from then on. And so it was accidentally that I started painting that kind of painting. But Instagram really hugely responded to that. So that was when my audience really did kind of explode. And I think people really responded to seeing themselves in the way that I painted them, because the point of the paintings is that they're celebratory. So often when you do see a larger body in a painting, they're either, I love people like Jenny Savile and Lucian Freud, but they do kind of make them grotesque and they kind of other them, or you'd see other artists, but they would be made dowdy and that kind of thing. And I just really wanted them to be really celebratory and uplifting and free of judgment. And so, yeah, people really, really hugely responded to that. So that is basically what I do. And then the whole idea is that, I think we should be allowed to be who we are. We shouldn't be made small by anybody, whether that's physically or, in terms of our ambitions or, anything we want for our lives. So, yeah, that's generally kind of my story. And then more recently, the more I kind of thought about, well, what is my why? Why am I doing this? Why am I making these paintings? I realized that it is, like I say, it's more than just how we look. It's the lives that we want to live. I thought, well, I've got really visible and I've been doing really well with my art career, and there's so many other artists asking me how I did it. And so I created my company Go Large, which is where I help other artists to get visible and find the career that suits them, not just the career that they think they're supposed to have or they see other artists having. So yeah, that's kind of the story from corporate to artist to eventually leaving the full-time job and being an artist and somebody who helps other artists get visible.
Yeah, so much within that story that we're going to unpack. But I just wanted to say congratulations as well, because you were recently commissioned by the BBC to do a portrait. And I love Bill Bailey.
It's not of him. The portrait is of, basically it's extraordinary portraits. So it's presented by Bill. And so Bill chooses 6 ordinary people who have extraordinary stories, and he chooses 6 artists and he pairs them up. So on camera, you meet your sitter and you get to know them. And we spent several months sort of going to where my sitter lives, and my sitter came here and Bill was with us, and eventually you paint a portrait of that person and reveal it at the end of the episode to them, their family. So yeah, that's how it works.
Oh, cool. That's so wonderful. And to see that whole process and getting to know the person. So I guess everybody's then not just curious about what the picture is going to be like, but they'll be able to see the person in the painting because they've got to know them alongside you.
Exactly. Yeah.
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 That's such a cool concept. And yeah, a gift to hang out with Bill Bailey. He just
Yes.
someone who is visible for very much being themselves,
Yeah,
who
that's true.
embodies that as well.
And it's fun to have him come to your house, which he
Yeah.
did.
There were a few things that I thought were quite interesting because you said, "Oh, I accidentally fell into this."
Yeah.
I kind of feel that you were following your heart,
Yes.
and so your heart led you to it. So, does that resonate?
Yeah, oh, definitely. In both, you know, being an artist and being an artist who paints what I paint, definitely. I think probably, with both things, I did it without thinking about it too much. And so it wasn't sort of, right, I'm going to create this new life for myself and I'm going to be an artist and this is what I'm going to paint. It's just, it all happened in a natural way. But I think it happened that way because that's what I needed to do. I don't think I'd still be doing it if I wasn't painting what I'm painting because I would have lost interest. So, and I know of artists as well who sort of change what they do and don't feel quite comfortable with it and not really sure exactly what it is they're trying to say. And I think, the answer to that is keep on going. The thing will find you. You'll know when you've got the thing that's the thing that you have to do.
Yeah, that's what stood out to me in your story because you said, you started painting full of figures that you don't normally see, and you wanted to celebrate them and not have them feel like shameful in any way, or, but something to say, look, isn't this incredible and beautiful that we're all so different?
Yeah.
Um, but that felt right to you.
Yeah.
Now, I run every like few months a magnetic messages challenge in my group. It's a free challenge that people can come along to just to help people understand a bit more about, well, what is your message? What is the meaning you want to create for your ideal clients? How do you want to be their champion and show up and all of that? But every single time I've run it without fail, someone was like, yeah, someone told me to do this. It didn't really feel right, but I didn't know what else to do, so I went with it. And I love that you said it, that when you found this, it felt right for you. And I think, as you were saying, with if you haven't quite felt a way of showing up and being visible or doing your work, if it doesn't feel right to you, don't do it just because some guru said
Exactly.
that's the way
Yeah.
to do it.
Exactly.
Keep looking, keep searching. Actually, it was Steph Fontaine. She's another artist. She was one of my very first guests way back when the show started. And she described finding a purpose little bit like a dog who goes sniffing a bit over here and then sniffing a bit
Mm.
over there. Eventually you kind of get to the right way for you. And I love that you found that, but had the courage as well to stick with it, even though it's not the conventional way, well, the conventional way these days that women are portrayed. I mean, if you go back to Renaissance, and back in art history, people were really quite curvy and
Yeah.
really portrayed as beautiful. So I love that it was, for me, it didn't feel accidental. It
Yes.
felt
Yeah.
like,
Yeah, you're right. It's not. I suppose finding that particular model first was the accident, and then it was like, right, of course, obviously, this has always been the thing. I just didn't realize it or remember that that was kind of what I should be doing. But the same with just changing my life as well. For so many years I had an office job and I never wanted an office job, but I never really thought about the fact that there might be other things you could do. I didn't really know anybody who did other things. Everybody just had office jobs that I knew. And I'd always kind of thought one day I'll work out what it is I want to be, which, you sort of think you stop doing that in your 20s and you work it out, but that's just not necessarily true. And I know that my mum was in her 40s when she really worked out what she wanted to do and sort of got the career that she really wanted. So I think I'd always thought, oh, well, it will just happen one day. And I think I probably just thought in the back of my head, it'll happen in my 40s. And that is exactly when it happened. So again, I kind of wasn't looking for the change or the thing. I just was living a life that wasn't particularly exciting or challenging or rewarding, in terms of work. Um, just thinking, well, one day the right thing will come, which isn't necessarily advice because I think you don't have to wait 25 years to find the thing that's right for you. But I do think if there's a thing that you're really driven to do, you will get there in the end.
yeah, and I think it's just never too late. Um,
Absolutely. Yeah.
as you say, our lives can change. I've got a client at the minute, and she was saying that there were so many changes in her life over the last few years. She thought that was it. She thought that's the end. I can't go on beyond
Mm,
this point. And now she's realizing, actually, no, now I can recreate things exactly how I want them to be.
exactly.
And it's been a real pivotal moment for her, and now it's just building that confidence to really live into something so
Yeah.
different.
Yes.
Um, and I think for a lot of us, we've never had the opportunity or been encouraged to dare to follow what we really want. So when we have those opportunities, it's great to jump on that and give it a go. Maybe it won't work out, but you don't know until you
Got to
try.
give it a go. And if that doesn't work out, there's likely something will come from it in some shape or form. It just might not look the way you originally thought. But that is the issue, that you grow up not being, not expecting to be allowed to have this bigger life. I think, certainly as a woman, I think, we're sort of conditioned to just have certain expectations and to not really go beyond that. And that is sort of part of what everything that I'm working towards is about, whether it's with Go Large or the paintings. I just think we shouldn't be constrained like that. We should be able to think bigger if we want to think bigger. So yeah.
Yeah. This is again why I love what you're doing and that you are helping others to live into that same opportunity because the more we do it, I used to run women's networks and I saw just how much more courageous
Mm.
are when they have a tribe of women that have their back. Uh,
Yes.
and so the progress and the development and the growth women had over, I ran it for 2 years and I had kids, so I had to leave. But the transformation we all experienced in that time was just phenomenal. And people were going for things that they would never think to do. And that's why I started my business, was thanks to all the courage that I'd had from my network and the number of women that had said if they had their time again, they would do anything to work flexibly around their kids. And I thought, well, actually, I have this opportunity. Maybe I can make this work. And 17 years later, I'm still here, which is
Wow.
wonderful. But yeah, actually, in that women's network, we had a lady, she was 55 years old, and she was the CEO of a private bank in Geneva. And I remember we went out for dinner, and she was like, yeah, haven't quite figured out what I want to do yet. And I was at the time, I was 31. I was like, haven't you made it? Aren't you there?
Yeah.
But actually, 3 years after that, she went on and she developed a charity to help educate girls in Africa, and
Amazing.
that's thriving ever since. So she did finally find her thing.
That's the
But yeah,
thing.
it's like finding that perfect time. It doesn't exist. So
Yeah.
if you find these little opportunities to try something new, go for it.
Yeah, exactly. If you can jump on it, jump on it. Exactly. And that's what I did when I left my full-time job only about, I think, 5 months ago. And it's scary because you think, well, this could all go horribly wrong. And then I won't have any money, any job, anything. But sometimes you just got to take the gamble. So I've taken the gamble and fingers crossed.
So I'd love to hear your perspective on getting visible because, as we've said, we're not necessarily encouraged to be out there living our dreams, dreaming of our biggest, wildest, and most amazing life. So, how have you managed that? How have you got more visible without necessarily being the loudest person in the room?
I think probably, I mean, it is that thing that everybody always says to do, which is to be authentic. But what took me a long time with being authentic is actually really knowing what that meant.
Mm.
And that's one of the things that really annoys me now when I see advice for artists and people are always saying you must be authentic and the importance of storytelling. But if you're not telling somebody literally what that means, it's really hard to do because what does it mean? So I think it was only when I stopped copying other artists, basically, stopped copying what other people were doing and realizing that I don't have to say the things, because it was Instagram really that got me visible. I mean, yeah, not really, like literally it was Instagram. And to begin with, you're frightened of standing out because you're frightened of doing the wrong thing, saying the wrong thing, looking the wrong way. So we all sort of turn up as artists on Instagram, seeing what other artists are doing and saying, and just copying them. And that's exactly what I was doing. I was using the words that they were using and just trying to be like them. And to an extent, I was getting away with it, but it was only when I sort of, and I don't know why I suddenly cottoned on to that not working. But it was only when I sort of realized that I don't have to say what they're saying. I don't have to do what they're doing. I don't have to do the exhibitions that everybody else is doing. I can find my own way. I can look for magazines instead of exhibitions, or I can, and a long time dream was to be on TV, which wasn't about me being on TV. It was about the message being on TV. It was, wanting the work to be for a big audience that isn't necessarily an art audience even. Like, I don't have dreams of being in really fancy art galleries for really expensive art buyers. That's not what I want to be. I want to be in front of just people who don't necessarily consider themselves art lovers, art experts, art buyers, just people, just normal people. So yeah, the idea of being on TV was sort of a secret dream. So very lucky that it's finally happening. But yeah, it was that. It was realizing that you don't have to copy other people that got me visible, because then suddenly I stood out, but without necessarily being loud. It's not like I'm super quiet and shy, but I'm not super loud either. My Instagram posts are usually about once a week. I don't do lives. I don't know if I've really even spoken on video on my art Instagram. But yeah, I think it was just realizing that I could be different. I love the Dolly Parton quote. I can't remember exactly what it is, but something like find out who you are and do it even more. And it was realizing what was different about me versus all the other artists, and what was different about the art versus all the other art, and just fully leaning into that.
Yeah, I love that so much. And yeah, a couple of years ago, LinkedIn named me as one of the most authentic contributors across their entire site.
Oh wow.
And like you, I don't do live videos all the while. I'm not even that consistent in posting. Sometimes I have good weeks and sometimes I forget for a couple of weeks. Oh, damn it, I haven't posted. But I always try and show up as my client's champion, because I think
Yeah.
there's so many people trying to make people feel small or stupid and hey, come and work with me because you don't know what you're doing.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
I really don't like that. So
Yes.
in my opinion, my clients are the experts. They're amazing. It's just not all quite coming together because we can't see what we can't see. So I help build that momentum, and then it starts to come together and we create something really beautiful.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was my mission. I'm just going to champion my clients. And that was really what I try and do in my content. And an interesting question, because I know a lot of people are worried about being visible because they've heard about trolls and people like attacking them. Like, how often have people come to you and said, I hate what you do, or anything like that?
Really weirdly, almost never.
Hmm.
And I still think, well, it's going to happen soon. Maybe it'll happen after the TV program. I think I've honestly had one person in terms of the artwork, more on the go large side, but in terms of the artwork, I just remember one person years ago, and it was when I was drawing, and I did a drawing of Trump, not because I like him, obviously, but I did a drawing of Trump, and I was trying to make a point. But I showed the beginnings of it, not the end of it, and so I then put him in a prison cell and stuff like that. But somebody commented before I shouldn't have posted it until it was finished, basically. And they commented, and I explained, like, no, this isn't a pro-Trump drawing. But they then just kind of went off on me and then started talking about my hair, because I have a shaved head. So that was all a bit bizarre. The only person I can think of that said anything negative at all about the artwork, which is weird.
Yeah, well, I'm the same. I've been posting online now for more than a decade, and people have only ever reached out and said thank you. In fact, people have offered me like all kinds of services and products and different things to say thank you because it's really helped them. So I just wanted to ask that question to put anyone's mind at rest who's thinking of going out there. And the beautiful thing is, if you're just starting out on social media, honestly, no one's looking.
Yeah.
You think you're being really brave and visible, but actually just like a handful of people are going to see
Yeah,
it.
and that's true. Even if you have a big account and big reach, there's still going to be loads of people who miss what you say and do. And even I still get this idea of like, oh, everybody's seeing everything I'm doing, and if I get it wrong, everyone's noticed, and they absolutely haven't. They don't see the faults that you see. They don't see the mistakes that you make. And they don't see all the posts. So yeah, don't
Yeah.
worry.
Yeah, don't worry, go out there, have fun.
Yeah.
And I often say that, your first clients aren't necessarily clients as much as they're co-creators. They
Mm,
help you to figure out what is it exactly that you're offering and where exactly do you use your value to have the most impact.
yes.
And it sounds like that's happened with you on Instagram when you started to like go with the kind of content that felt right for you, then other people were jumping in and saying, we love this, more please.
Yeah.
So they were helping guide you as well. It's not a solo activity.
100%. And it just makes the whole thing so much more meaningful. And I always used to feel quite selfish in the art studio. And I'm really lucky that my husband does all the housework and just, he keeps everything running, the cooking, the cleaning, the washing, everything, so that I can spend all my time painting or working on Go Large. And that's always felt really selfish, sort of sitting in there, making nice paintings and relaxing with podcasts on in the background. You just think, oh, this is lovely. But it's the knowledge that that's the kind of reaction it's going to get when I finally finish the painting and introduce it to the world. It is really meaningful to people. So it just makes it so much more meaningful to me, and it makes me feel less selfish.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. I wanted to come back to your point around authenticity because it comes back a little bit to that sort of dog analogy that we had. Because when I work with a client, we really dig deep into who are you exactly. We bring all their life experiences into that, their strengths, their weaknesses, their mess ups, because that's where the real juicy stuff is.
Yeah.
That's often what's led us to do what we do. We dig into all of it. And we do the same for their ideal clients, but then we go a step further. It's like, well, what does that mean? What does it mean to live into this value? You've learned that lesson, but how is that shaping the work you do and why you do it? So we can start to understand. And then when we see that kind of context and their clients and where their overlap is, it all starts to make sense. But it's still a process. It's still
Yeah.
this kind of getting out there, working with people, sharing your message, and then refining that according to your audience.
Yeah, the sort of the main offering that I have in Go Large is called the Strategy Reset, and at the very start of it, that's what artists do. So that they first look at what their goals are, and that's life goals, not just goals, in terms of art career. But then the big piece of work, and it's really interesting because when I created it, I knew that would be a big piece of work. But it's seeing the artist go through it, you realize how big it is. That it's kind of they're spending a lot of time on it. Is the why, and it's the why behind being an artist, and what's the message, what is it you're trying to say, what is it about you that makes what you're saying important. It's that whole I just don't believe you can really fully get yourself across, your work across, be properly successful and visible without grasping that.
Yeah.
It's been really nice kind of seeing them really dig into that and have big realizations.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. When I do that work with my clients, suddenly they see themselves in a different way. They start to show up in a different way. And even before we really got into the core of the program, they're starting to attract more clients and opportunities and feel more confident
Yeah.
just because they've really started to see, oh, well, this is where I fit in. This is
Yeah.
where I can have an impact and start to get excited about that. It's really cool.
And understanding a purpose, as soon as you think, well, actually, no, I'm doing this for a reason, there's a real purpose behind this, that's when you can have the confidence, because you think, I don't care what people say, none of that matters. What matters is the thing that I'm trying to do.
Yes. And I think this is a key thing. I wrote a book a few years ago, A Shy Girl's Guide to Networking, and that was the idea that really helped me to shift from feeling so out of place and awkward networking to realizing, well, if I'm going to show up as the champion for my clients, then, I have to be out there and it's not about me anyway. And that made the whole thing much easier.
Yeah.
But when it comes to getting more visible, do you see any like best practice things that if you do this, it's really going to start to work for you?
I think the main thing I think probably is sort of remembering why you're doing it, remembering what your purpose is, what your message is, and thinking about that, not thinking about anything awful that anybody might think about you and what you're saying and the way you look. But also doing it in the way that suits you. So, when people do first go on Instagram, they think, oh God, I have to, especially as an artist, oh, I have to make those videos where I turn around and show my painting. And it's realizing that you don't have to do those things. So I think the most useful thing you can do is think, well, what is comfortable for me? And
Yes.
lots of artists that I work with don't want to be seen on camera at all. And it is really helpful if you can show who you are as an artist as well as just the art. But then I would say do it in the way that works for you. So just work your way into it gradually. So instead of just showing your artwork, show artwork with you painting. And it might just be a little bit of you. You don't have to be full face. And gradually they work their way up to, some of them even doing lives, which even I don't do. But yeah, so it's don't force yourself to do something that isn't natural to you. You just as we know when we found the thing, you also know when you're doing something that isn't right for you. And if putting your face up there endlessly feels uncomfortable, then don't do it. There will be other ways of getting you across. And also lots of people, when I sort of talk about saying more about yourself and not just posting, this is my painting and this is how long it took and this is the size. Tell them something about you and the story behind the work, or the meaning behind the work, or the message behind everything that you're doing. They're worried that they're going to have to give away too much, and you don't. So again, it's showing as much of yourself as feels comfortable to you. And some artists will show a lot and they'll talk about their struggles, but you don't have to. You absolutely don't have to do that. I mean, I don't really do that. I try to show people who I am, but I'm not one of those people that will show you the bad days and the good days. I just show you sort of the general me. But if you want to show that, then do that too. It's that whole thing that, you don't do what you see other people doing and assume will work for you, because you won't feel comfortable doing it, you won't want to do it anymore, and you will stop. But also, with all things, what works for somebody else isn't necessarily your thing, because their goals aren't necessarily your goals. What they want to do with their work isn't necessarily what you want to do with it. So the way I show up on Instagram has been for quite a long time designed around getting the kinds of opportunities like being on Extraordinary Portraits, and it wasn't around getting gallery representation. So if somebody started copying me but they wanted gallery representation, well, that might not work. So again, it's sort of working out what it is you want and being visible in a way that will help you get towards that, and knowing what you're comfortable with, and don't push yourself to do things that just aren't right for you.
Yeah, I love everything about what you just said. It's only when we're really showing up as ourselves that we feel we're doing something worthwhile, and that we start attracting the right people and opportunities. As you're saying, if you try and show up like Heron, you're going to get her opportunities, which
Yes.
her people, which might not be your people. Um,
Yes.
and I hear this all the time. You must do this. You have to do whatever. And I'm saying those words don't exist in marketing.
Yeah.
Marketing is very artistic. You just have a go and experiment and see what works and build on that and see what feels right, and do more of that. And if it doesn't feel right, take a step back and regroup. And it's nice to have a community of people around you that you can go to and say, I've tried this, it didn't feel right. What else can I try? Because
Yeah.
sometimes people stick with a strategy that isn't working
Yes.
just because they don't know what else to do.
Yes. And you want to have some consistency. So I always do say, if you're trying something and you're posting in a particular way that feels right and nothing happens, don't assume like that was wrong. Give it a few goes. You're not going to go from sort of 200 followers to 2,000 followers in a month by just doing one thing. So yeah, do that thing for a while. But definitely, if you're getting nowhere at all eventually, then try something else.
Yeah, I often think that the algorithm has off days too.
Yeah.
I very often post identical content because, I posted something one time, it was really good, people loved it. So I post that exact same content like 3 months later, and it gets crickets. It's like,
Yeah, interesting.
I've
Yeah,
never
I've
worked.
heard of people doing that, taking a piece and posting it again several months later. I've never tried doing it, but I might give it a go. But I think what would be interesting with that is to see, did you post it at the same kind of time of day, same kind of day of the week? Because all those things matter. And posting it when if you've had a really bad couple of posts, if you've had really low engagement, then your next post is likely to follow suit. You sort of want to post it at your best time. Like, I know for me, my best time is about 7 o'clock on a Sunday. So if I've got a brilliant post, that's when it's going out on my art account anyway. So yeah, making sure that you use your best stuff in the best possible way rather than just sort of wasting it. That would be a tip from me.
Yeah. Yeah. You need a bit of patience and to look at the data. The data can give you a lot of information. And yeah, I don't always spend enough time. I was like, oh, I've got an idea. I'm just going to put it out there.
Yeah, and
I,
not everybody wants to, not everybody's interested. You don't always want to sort of sit and dig into, because something that you can do is go and get a month's worth of data and put it in a spreadsheet, look at it, but 99% of people don't want to do that. It's boring.
yeah, get your VA to do it.
Yeah, yeah.
Brilliant. Karen, I've loved everything about this conversation.
Me too.
I'm just curious, for anyone out there, whether they're an artist or whatever kind of business they're in, and they want to go large, they want to step more into their meaning and get more visible and start to go in the direction of their dreams, to quote like Instagram kind of post. Is there anything you feel that we haven't discussed that they would need to know to take or have the courage to take the first step?
I think honestly, for me, it would be that whole digging into your message and your purpose, because I think without that, it is hard to have the courage to do all the things and not be frightened of crickets when you post, and not be frightened of somebody saying something negative. Not that it happens very often, but you worry that it will. So I think it is, as long as you're really sure of what it is you're doing and why you're doing it, everything is so much easier. So yeah, I would say that would be my biggest tip, to take the time to really think about what that is. And I know, for artists, they don't always do that. Lots do, but there will be lots of artists who, when I say who is your work for, it's like, it's for everybody who likes art. It's like, well, is it, you need to really think about what it is that you're doing and who you're trying to affect before you can really fully get yourself visible. So yeah, that would be my big tip.
Yeah, I love that you've raised that, because I think that's a step lots of people miss because they're so excited to get out
Yeah.
there. They're just like, oh, I'm gonna share this with everybody. But yeah, it's so worth taking that step back, that bit of time to figure out, who is this for? What's the meaning? Why do I care? What's the meaning for me? Then what does that mean for your direction going forward? And where are you trying to get to as well?
Yeah.
It's always time well spent.
Yes, yeah, and it for me was 100% the missing key when it came to my art. For my whole life, it was the missing piece. Once I understood that, then I understood the audience, and then I understood, where I was trying to go and where I was trying to take them, and everything, everything came from that. I couldn't have done it without understanding that.
Yeah, brilliant. Karen, thank you so much. Now, I know everybody listening is going to be super curious to see your art. Where's the best place for them to find that?
Well, they can find it on my Instagram, which is Karen_Turner_artist, but also my website if you're not on Instagram. So that is KarenTurnerFineArt.com. And also, if anybody is interested in tips on getting visible, whether you're an artist or a creative, then I also have an Instagram account, which is Go Large, and it's a dot before the E. So GoLarge.e. It's not a very great way of explaining it, but yeah. And then a website as well, which is go-large.com.
Brilliant. We'll put all those links in the show notes for you as well. And you also have an audio series to help people, mainly creatives, but as we've discussed, it's the same process for pretty much anyone who wants to start getting more visible on Instagram. Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah, well, it's visible generally. Instagram is my thing, but you can use all of my advice for different platforms if you're on Facebook instead, or TikTok, or wherever. So yeah, it's a mindset guide. It's a 5-day audio series, just helping you, again, feel the confidence of why it is you're doing what you're doing, because it's, whatever it is, if it's worth it to you, it's worth it to plenty of other people.
Yeah, brilliant. So we'll put the link to that in the show notes as well,
Ah.
which will be at melittacampbell.com/post/Karen-Turner. There we go. Karen, thank you so much for taking the time to speak to us today.
Thank you for having me. It's been brilliant. I've had a really nice chat.
Thank you for joining us today. I hope you have found this episode interesting and valuable, and you're all ready to get out there and go large in whatever way feels meaningful for you and your business. And remember, if you want more advice on how to build your authentic marketing, messaging, and sales process, come along to melittacampbell.com/club. That link will take you to my Dream Clients Club, where you'll find a community of experts with big hearts, just like you, building a services-based business, and a whole classroom full of masterclasses that you can instantly dive into to support your business journey. I look forward to welcoming you there. That's melittacampbell.com/club. And I'll be back here again next Wednesday with more advice on how you can adopt the art of value whispering to stand out, to make a difference without feeling loud or pushy. I'll see you then.